So today we have a beautiful passage from the Gospel of Luke. We are going to do two passages. The first one is the Transfiguration, Luke chapter 9, verses 28 to 36. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter and John and James and went up to the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his countenance was altered, and his raiment became dazzling white. And behold, two men talked with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep, and when they wakened, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is well that we are here. Let us make three booths, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. As he said this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silence and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. Now, the passage begins by saying, 8 days after these sayings. Now, what is these sayings? We saw last class, Jesus asked them, Who do men say that I am? And finally, who do you say that I am? And we have that wonderful declaration of faith by Peter, who says, You are the Messiah, you are the Son of God. So after that, Jesus tells them, if anyone wants to follow me, you must take up your cross every day. You must deny yourself and follow me. So these are the sayings that we heard. And 8 days after this, Jesus goes up to the mountain to pray along with the core group, Peter, James, and John, his three disciples who are the inner circle. And they go there to pray on the mountain. And as they are praying, suddenly the face of Jesus, his whole appearance changes. He begins to show his real glory to them. And along with that, we also have Moses and Elijah. Moses represents the law, and Elijah represents the prophets. So much to say that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. So the entire Old Testament is there, and now we have Jesus, who is the new covenant. No, the old covenant is over, and now we have Jesus, who is now the new covenant. And he is talking to them about his departure, about his going to Jerusalem to be crucified. You see, this whole mission of Jesus is so clear. Although, he is sidetracked on the way by so many things, by all that he is saying and doing, Jesus' focus never changes. He is always heading towards Jerusalem, and he's always thinking about his passion, death, and resurrection. That is his full focus. That is the mission for which he came. And so that is very clear. And even now, what is the conversation that he has with Moses and Elijah? It is about his departure to Jerusalem. So that is what they're talking about. And then we see here something very beautiful. Peter and James and John, although they are heavy with sleep, they are now awake and they see his glory. So it is something so important for us to understand what Luke is saying here, that Peter, James, and John saw the glory of Jesus because they were awake. If they had gone to sleep, they wouldn't have seen all this. Very often for us too, we miss God's glory because we are heavy with sleep. We are not awake. We are not awake to God's presence due to various reasons. It could be because our mind is clogged, is crowded with so many things that we are not awake to God's presence. Our mind is filled with prejudices, filled with ideas that are probably contrary to the gospel, and our minds are closed to the kingdom, that we do not recognize, we do not see, we are not awake to God's presence in our lives. Jesus is there. Jesus is there in all his glory, and we miss him. We are not awake to his presence because our eyes are not focused on him. We are awake to everything else except to what Jesus is saying and doing. So, very often in our lives, we miss out on this glory of the Lord because we are not available to him. These three apostles were there on that mountain and they were awake. Luke says they were awake, and that is why they were able to see Jesus glorified and Moses and Elijah with him. And of course, Peter doesn't know what to say, he just blabbers something. And then there is an audio visual. You see, the audio is there now from the Father. There's a voice. It says that he is my son, my beloved, my chosen, and you will do well to listen to him. A very clear voice, no, from the Father. So there is an audio and there is also the video, the cloud. They enter into the cloud. They have the transfigured Jesus. They have Moses and Elijah, and then of course they disappear. And this entering into the cloud, they hear this voice. And when the voice finished speaking, Jesus is alone. And they did not tell this to anyone in those days. Why? Because Jesus had very specifically told them, do not talk about this until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. He'll say this in another gospel. So we know that this was a very special incident. We will never know what happened on this mount of transfiguration, but we do know something, that Jesus showed himself in glory and the apostles were able to see him because they were awake. And we are reminded of the beautiful passage from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 18, where Paul says that we too, with unveiled faces, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being changed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. So here is a reminder for us that Jesus, who goes before us, who is preeminent in everything, when he revealed himself in power, when he revealed himself as someone so powerful, so bright, it is a reminder for us that we too one day will be transfigured, that we will have a glorious body. What we have now is a broken body, a body that is frail, a body that is sinful, a body that is limited. But as we continue to behold his glory, we will be transformed from one degree of glory to the next, and we will experience the same uh, glory that Jesus is experiencing. So we are being changed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. And as we continue to look at Jesus, as we continue to follow him, as the apostles continued to follow him after the resurrection, we too will begin to experience this glory that they experienced. The glory comes to us when we continue to follow the Lord, continue to do his will in our lives. The Lord invites us to this experience. He says, see, I have gone before you. I have shown the way, and I want you to follow me. And when you follow me, you too will experience that glory. And so we are not ordinary people. We are people who are really special, and God has called us for something much, much greater. And this life that we are living is just a preparation for that eternal glory that we will experience in all for all eternity with the Father. And so let us look forward to that and let us keep ourselves focused on the kingdom that is awaiting us. A kingdom that will be so beautiful, as St. Paul would say, no eye has seen, no ear has heard what God has prepared for those who love Him. We cannot imagine the kind of kingdom that is awaiting us. And so we who are looking forward to that should keep preparing ourselves every day as we keep approaching our own end. We must remember that we are going to be transformed from one degree of glory to another. And this is just a glimpse of what we will experience. So the whole transfiguration for us reminds us of something so beautiful. And Jesus transfigured here, he shows that he is the glorious Lord. And that was such an assurance for them. And the assurance also comes from Moses and Elijah. They kind of give their approval for Jesus to go on to Jerusalem. And Jesus will continue his journey in this assurance and in this power. And we now come to another passage which continues. On the next day, that is after they came down from the mountain, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. And behold, a man from the crowd cried, Teacher, I beg you to look upon my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him till he foams and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, O faithless and perverse generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon tore him and convulsed him. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. And all were astonished at the majesty of God. But while they were all marveling at everything he did, he said to his disciples, Let these words sink into your ears, for the Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men. But they did not understand this saying, and it was concealed from them that they should not perceive it. And they were afraid to ask him about this saying. Again, we see here something so tremendous. Jesus is coming down from the mountain and he sees a lot of commotion. He sees a large crowd, and there is this boy who is convulsing, who is possessed, and there is his group of disciples who are trying to heal this boy, but they are not able to do anything. And there is the father of the boy who is so upset and so shattered that nobody is able to help him. He feels terribly helpless. And here comes Jesus, so powerful. We see Jesus here, who's the master of the situation. Jesus just, looks at the boy and he rebukes the unclean spirit, and the boy is completely set free. And what does the verse say? It says they were all astonished at the majesty of God. See the power that exuded from Jesus. He was the master of the situation. He had just come down from the mountain, and we read in the other gospels, we will read, the apostles will ask him, Lord, why couldn't we do this? And he would tell them, this cannot be done except by prayer and fasting. So Jesus was there. He had that power within him to heal. And there was no power that was greater than him. And so he was able to rebuke the unclean spirit. He was able to set this boy free. And the father of the boy would cry, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. All that is not recorded by Luke, but we have it in the other gospels. And Since there is a huge crowd there, Jesus would immediately set this boy free. The spirit was so powerful, it knocked him down. It is like a boxer giving a solid punch on your face and you go rolling and reeling on the floor. Now, that's the kind of power that came from this spirit, this evil spirit. And it was torturing this boy for years. We read in the other gospel that it would throw him into the fire and into the water. And this man must have gone through hell, looking after this son. But here is Jesus who becomes the master of the situation. And, there is such a commotion there. People do not know what to do. And Jesus quietly heals this boy. Similarly, for us, we too sometimes go through this kind of a phase in our life when everything is so confusing, everything is in a mess, and we do not know what to do. We are not able to take hold of a situation. No, it goes beyond us. And then we need to invite the Master. When Jesus comes, all the chaos is gone. There is only peace. You know, the apostles were totally helpless. They were all there, but then they couldn't do anything. So there they needed that divine power. So too in our lives, when we think, with all the power and strength and all the forces that we have, if we think we can control certain things, there are times when we can't. And we need to yield to a higher power. We need to turn to Jesus and say, Lord, you take care of the situation. And when Jesus comes there, there is peace. When Jesus comes there, there is a solution. So we need to turn to Jesus. And what is so beautiful, how Luke doesn't mention so many other things which the other evangelists mention. But what he says here is, while they were all marveling at his power and his majesty, Jesus is telling them, let these words sink into your ears. Imagine they've seen such a powerful miracle, and he's telling them, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. He is going to go to the cross. Of course, they don't understand this at all. But then you see, Jesus, his whole focus is not diverted. Probably if Jesus had just allowed himself to bask in this kind of glory, he could have been carried away and he could have been made king. Several times they tried to do this with Jesus. When he did a great miracle, when he multiplied the bread, for instance, they wanted to crown him king. We read that in the Gospel of John. But see here again, they are marveling at his glory. And yet Jesus will always keep his eyes towards Jerusalem. His focus is very clear. He says the Son of Man must be delivered. Over and over again, you see, when Peter says, you are the Messiah, you are the Son of God, immediately Jesus would only say, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to Jerusalem to suffer and die. And again, now at the Transfiguration, he's talking about that to Moses and Elijah. And now again, after this miracle, Jesus is telling them that the Son of Man has to be delivered into the hands of men. You see, the focus of Jesus was very clear. He was going to the cross. And that is how every disciple should be following the Master. Keep your eyes focused on your mission. If God has given you a certain mission, Jesus will say, go towards it. Don't lose focus. Don't get distracted. Don't get carried away by all the other things that happen on the side. They're all there just to lead you towards your destination, not to divert you, not to take you away. So let us keep our focus on why we are here. Ask yourself, and I ask myself, why am I here in this world? What is the purpose? God has planted me in this world and given me the gift of life. God has a plan for each one of us. And if we have to accomplish His plan, we need to keep our eyes and ears open to Him. We need to understand what is God's plan for me today and every day so that I may walk in it and walk towards the destination to which God is calling me. Perhaps there are times when the path is not clear. There are times when I'm sidetracked. There are times when my vision gets hazy, but I need to go back to the Lord in prayer and say, Lord, you show me where I need to go. Lord, you help me and give me the grace to stay focused on where my destination is. So once we keep going towards our destination, holding the hand of Jesus, we will never lose our way, and we will always go towards where God wants us to go, and we will also be able to lead others as we journey along. Lead others who are kind of groping in the dark. Lead them also towards their destination as we pray along with them as we lead them. So let us keep our focus on Jesus and let us continue to walk. You see, all that Jesus says and does will really make sense to us once we know that God has a beautiful plan for us. And at the end of our lives, we will all receive that reward, that crown that is waiting for us. It is with this hope and it is with this desire that we need to keep walking every day. Praise God.